Hello, this is Robert Messina. This is the third video that I made in the last month that is got to do with the 1,000 years after Jesus comes back, when we're in our peaceful time where we don't have too many problems. We have our Prince, we're the bride of Christ with him, and all things are good. And one of the things I wanted to strengthen, one of the points I wanted to make sure that I get the point across, is that the law of Moses, the written law of Moses, written with Hebrew letters and dots and tittles, it's going to be harder for that law to pass away, and it would be easier for the heaven and earth to pass away. So the heaven and earth are going to pass away, but we are going to be in our millennium time when the earth that we have right now is still there. The heaven and earth are going to pass away, and then we're going to have a new heaven, new earth, and the new heaven, our new residence, is going to be in the new Jerusalem. Okay? And when we are living in the millennium time, we are still going to have flesh and bones. We're still going to eat. We're still going to be just like Jesus when he resurrected. Okay? When he resurrected, he ate and had fish, and he communed, and he knew who everybody was. We're going to know him. He's going to know us. Ezekiel explains a temple, a third temple, and it's much bigger. It has enough detailed description in the Bible for men today to build such a temple. The thing I don't know is it going to be the same temple that the Antichrist, the man of perdition, if he's going to be sitting in the rebuilt temple of Ezekiel, which is possible. It is possible. Or he's going to be sitting in his own temple in some other way. If it's going to be God's holy place that he sits in, or if it's going to be his own holy place that he sits in, I don't know. But he's definitely going to be sitting in a holy place, start a great tribulation that the world has never seen. And I want to get going here with some of the proof that I've laid out, and I want to get that started. That's going to be the topic. Okay, the first thing I want to point out is that Jesus gave us a model prayer where we should pray every day. We should pray that prayer at least once a day. It is the way to pray. It has the right words. It's a model how we should pray. All right? Now, what I want to point out is that there are 12 things we want to ask for. 12 things. Here's basically what we're asking for in the first 4 things is that his millennium comes. And that we have a better law. The law of God is better than what we have now. What we have now is we're sinning left and right, without sacrifice, without anything. A lot of people sin, they have the conscience, and they don't even ask for forgiveness. This is all got to be more perfected than it is now. And I believe that the perfection is going to be during the 1,000 years. It's all going to work. Every jot and tittle is going to be accounted for and weighed and said, yeah, this works for not only for me and you, but for everybody. It's going to work. It's going to be there. And if there is going to be sin, and there may be sin because there are sacrifices because we sin written in the law, and those are going to be done. I don't know how much sin is going to be there because it's going to be where we don't have a false prophet anymore, a false doctrine. We don't have false doctrine. A false doctrine makes you sin because you're believing a man that tells you what sin is and what isn't, what's right and what's wrong. And he's blind, so he doesn't know, and you're listening to a blind man. That's false doctrine. That's not going to be here anymore. All right? That entity, the entire false prophet entity, is going to be thrown into the lake of fire before we have our millennium years, or 1,000 years. And the same thing with the beast that caused the abomination of desolation and made everything bad. That guy and his entity, his entire entity, is going to be thrown into the lake of fire. And all we have left as far as evil goes is Satan. And Satan's going to be tied up and chained into a pit. And he won't be with us until the 1,000 years are over. And then it's another thing. So all during that 1,000 years, it's very possible that we obey the law. We're going to have, all going to be able to understand it. Whether you understood the law when you lived in these days, you're going to understand, no matter what, you're going to understand the entire law when you go over there, when we're on the other side. You're going to be there, and you're going to have the knowledge of God, and his law is going to be put in your heart. And you're going to have understanding. Your understanding is going to increase 100 times. The knowledge of the Lord will be as waters cover the sea. Nobody has to say, know the Lord. Everybody's going to know the Lord. Knowledge will increase as it is now. It has increased now. We're in the last days now. But when he comes, the knowledge that we had in order to stay afloat and believe him and walk with him, the Bible knowledge is going to pass away. We're going to know him. He's going to know us. We're going to have his mind and his law. The one who wrote the law of Moses, we're going to have that same brain, and he's going to tell us everything we need to know. You're not going to be coming in blind. You don't have to worry about it. He's going to give you the law in your heart, and it's going to be just as if it was written. Every jot and tittle is going to be in your heart. And we're going to go over the jot and tittle part. But I first want to start with the fact that the daily prayer has 4 items up front that are pointing to your desire that his millennium, his 1,000 years comes. Okay? And you're going to be in that resurrection. And that's part of the first 4 supplications. And then the second 4 are mostly, they also apply to the millennium, but most of the next 4 apply to our walk with him in this world as you're hearing me right now. You're looking at a video tube. We're not going to have that then. Okay? And then the final 4 requests that we have, all again, are geared towards seeking and wanting his resurrection, and with praise of him, that we're going to have a lot of praise to Yehoshua HaMashiach when he comes. We're going to be his bride. He's going to be our a new groom, new husband, and he's going to be good to us. He's going to love us, and we're going to love him. We're going to desire him, just the way a male and female work today. And there's not going to be any regular male and female, by the way. Well, everybody's going to be the same, and I already went through that with the other videos. So let's go to the prayer. May your name be kept holy. Now, this is prophesied that it will happen. His name is going to be kept holy. And Amos chapter 2, verse 7, there are going to be those that pant after the dust of the earth on the head of the poor. Now, these are bad guys right here. And they turn aside the way of the meek. Okay, they're bad. They turn them. There's a meek guy, and they're powerful, and they push him away. And then the third one is a man and his father will go unto the same maid. So there's a lot of fornication there and things that are not right. And this is what is happening in this world. And when Amos lived. And it's happening now today. And it happened many, many years all throughout history between everybody, including Israel. Now, anyway, the last thing he says in that verse is, they profane my holy name. Okay? He wants his name to be holy, not profaned. So that is what's going to happen. Ezekiel 43:7, and he sent unto me, Son of man, the place of my throne and the place of the soles of my feet, where I will dwell in the midst of the children of Israel forever. And my holy name shall the house of Israel no more defile. Neither they nor their kings by their whoredom, nor by the carcasses of their kings in their high places. So this is something that he had to live with. He loves both Judah and Israel as his wife. And they act like whores. And you think he's going to be happy about that? No, he was always living with it. But there's going to be a time when he is no longer going to need to have to live with it. He's going to like to live with it because he's going to dwell in the midst of us forever. And his holy name shall the house of Israel no more defile. And we are part, you could say we're Gentiles are included in that. Gentiles that believe in Yehoshua, that you could say they're the house of Israel because they basically are. Isn't Jesus part of the house of Israel? Aren't we one with Jesus? Okay. Now the second one, may your kingdom come. Revelation 11:15, and the seventh angel sounded, and there were great voice. The seventh angel sounded. So we're still in tribulation, and he hasn't come yet. Now he sounds. All right? And we're asking for his kingdom to come. So we're asking for that seventh angel to sound, is what we're asking. And there were great voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. All right? So it's perfectly clear that his kingdom is going to come, and it tells you right here when. Daniel chapter 2, verses 44 and 45. And in the days of these kings, now all the seven heads of the dragon he was talking about, but he actually in this particular chapter, he starts with Babylon. He doesn't mention Egypt or Assyria, just to let you know. And in the days of these kings, and there were 5 of them. The feet with clay and iron and 10 toes. That was the final kingdom, and it's the kingdom of the Antichrist beast that's described in Revelation 13. He's got a short life. There's that one. He only has 42. He only has 7 years. He basically has 7 years, and then he's thrown into the lake of fire, like I said before. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. And the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms. And it shall stand forever. And as for as much as thou sawest that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it brake in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God has made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter. And the dream is certain, and the interpretation thereof is sure. Okay, so you're asking may your kingdom come? He's telling you it's going to come, and he's telling you that his kingdom is going to come after the 7th trumpet, and it's going to last forever, and we're going to be with him forever. And that's talking about the millennium. Okay, then the next verse says, may your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Okay, that makes sense, right? Now, what is his will? His will was written in the law of Moses. That's his will. He didn't come to do away with the law of Moses. He came to fulfill it. And it's going to be fulfilled in the millennium. It hasn't been fulfilled yet. Every jot and tittle hasn't happened yet. He was never satisfied with everybody. Never. He was never satisfied with the way everybody obeys the Lord. But he will be. He'll be pleased. Okay? Ezekiel 43:11 talks about his will be done as it is in heaven. 43:11. And if they be ashamed, so they've already found out that they were sinful. Okay, they found out they were sinful of all that they have done. Show them the form of the house and the fashion thereof, and the going out thereof, and the comings in thereof, and all the forms thereof, and all the ordinances thereof, and all of the forms thereof, and all of the laws thereof, write it in their sight, that they may keep the whole form thereof, and all the ordinances thereof, and do them. Okay, so right there, he's talking about how it's all going to be done. They're going to do it. We're all going to do it. We're going to win this thing. We're going to please him on every jot and tittle. And I'll get to that again. This is the law of the house upon the top of the mountain. The whole limit thereof round about shall be most holy. Behold, this is the law of the house. Okay, so the law of the house shall be most holy. So the law that was given, the Torah, is holy. It will be holy. It's not. I mean, it's trespass these days, and it always was. So those were the 4 that we're asking for the millennium to come. The next 4 parts of the prayer apply to both here and now and then, but mostly here and now. And that would be, give us this day our daily bread, because once we get to the millennium, we're not going to be really worried about having bread. We're gonna have trees of life around. We're not going to be worried about our daily bread, but we will be concerned. We'll be thankful. We'll be talking about it because He wants us to pray this way. It's just that our prayers are going to be answered every day. And then it's forgive us our debts, and we need to do that because when we're going to have, we may be needing to come before Him in the millennium and ask for forgiveness for things, because He does talk about separating the profane from the holy. Okay, there's going to be some kind of a separation. They had the temple had an outer court for the Gentiles, for the profane, it says, and then for the circumcised in heart or in flesh, for those that are allowed to go into the temple. So you see, so because there's a difference in the temple itself, there's going to be some kind of difference with what is more perfect than something else. I mean, that's the only way I can describe it. I think everything's going to be perfect, but some things are going to be more perfect than other things. For example, when they said, "Good master," and then he turns and Jesus says, "Why do you call me good? Only your Father in heaven is good." And then there's another verse that sort of like coincides with that, hating even the spotted garment of the flesh. So because you have a spotted garment of the flesh, you already got a problem. There is going to be some kind of a difference. Otherwise, there won't be any sacrifices for sin. There's sacrifices for sin. How could you sin? And I don't know how we're going to sin, because we're not going to have anybody tempting us. Satan is not going to be there. We're not going to be stupefied by a false doctrine. That's not going to happen. I mean, you're going to sin if you listen to a guy that doesn't know what he's talking about and is wrong. He's seated from the devil, the accuser, the one who wants to accuse you. You're going to be listening to the guy who wants to accuse you if you listen to that false doctrine. But we're not going to have a false doctrine. There's not going to be. We're going to have the law of God as written by Moses. And believe me, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. It really is a beautiful thing. It isn't tedious. It isn't hard. Okay? So to forgive us our debts, and then as we forgive our debtors. See, this is more for this world, but it will probably have something to do in the next world. Lead us not into temptation. That's another one that's mostly for this world. Now, the last four supplications are directed, again, more for the time after He comes than for now. I mean, the first one, deliver us from evil. We're asking that for now, but when we are there in His, that prayer is going to be answered, because we're going to be delivered from evil. I think that there might be a tree of knowledge of good and evil, but as far as the knowledge of the evil, I don't think there's going to be much evil that we're going to see up there. And I went through that in the other video there. But anyway, Romans 12:21, he gives an advice: be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. So you have evil, and the way to overcome it and nullify it and put it away is to overcome it with good. And Second Thessalonians 2:8 sort of like reinforces that when he says, "And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming." So you see, he's going to come, and when he comes, he's going to come with all of who he is. And who is he? He's not evil. He's the opposite. He's totally good. He's totally love. He's totally for the everybody's salvation. He came to save us. We were already condemned. This is the Savior coming when he comes. And there's not going to be, the guy who is evil. Any evil is going to be destroyed with his brightness, and he is going to have brightness. He's going to be bright and loving, and it's going to be. He's going to have we're going to have a very strong desire to be with him for his loving kindness. Okay, then the next one. Then you have the next three parts. You have, "For thine is the kingdom." Okay, Matthew 16:28. "Verily I say unto you, there be some standing here which shall not taste of death till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." Okay, so there were people that were standing there that believed Jesus. When they went into the grave, they went up to the bosom of Abraham, and they didn't die yet. They're waiting for him to come back, and when he comes back, they're going to come back with him. All right, that's what I see with that one. The next piece, "For thine is the kingdom and the power." I go to Hebrew 1 verse 3. "Who, being the brightness of his glory and the express image of his person, and upholding all things by the word of his power, when he had by himself purged our sins, sat down on the right hand of the majesty on high." So you have the glory and the power in that verse, and the glory is in the next thing we're going to ask for, that "For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory." Ezekiel 43:2. "And behold, the glory of God of Israel came from the way of the east, and his voice was like a noise of many waters, and the earth shined with his glory." We want his glory to be forever. Okay? We're asking that too. But I already gave you 4. All right, so I want to give a little more information about the jot and the tittle. All right, and first let me read the verse. Matthew 5:17 and 18. "Think not that I come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law till all be fulfilled." Okay, so I'm probably like most of you, where when I first read that, I felt when he came, we don't have to worry about the law anymore, and we don't. We don't, by the way. We won't even have to worry about when we have to do it, because he's going to put his law in our hearts, and his law is going to give us all the information and what we need to do and we're gonna obey like obedient children. You can't come into the kingdom unless you're like a obedient child. I used to think that just because he came and he was posted onto the cross and he was nailed to the cross and he I everything was fulfilled then. But really, the thing that happened then, the main thing that happened then, is the blood, the atonement blood that covers our sins. It was provided. The payment was made for us. He's our redeemer. That part happened. Because that happened, we are going to be allowed in the resurrection with his righteousness. Okay? With his new body, his righteousness, his laws in our hearts, and we're going to have 1,000 years. And Ezekiel, not only is he talking about bones being resurrected, he's also talking about a temple that is going to be built. The way this verse should be understood is you have two things. You have an heaven and an earth, the ones we have now, and you have the written law, the ones we have now. They are both going to pass away. But the law is not going to pass away first. Heaven and earth has to pass away first, and then the law. So we are going to be, in the millennium time, we're going to be on this earth. When New Jerusalem comes, we're going to be forever and forever in New Jerusalem. We're going to be the bride, and he's going to be, and we're going to be one with Christ then. All right? And we're going to be one with Christ when he comes, but we're going to be more like an engagement period than a complete consummated marriage. That's my guess. I don't know. People are engaged, they're both in love with one another. And after they're married, they're both in love with one another. So it doesn't really make that much. Once the engagement, that's a pretty strong thing. And I think that the millennium is part of the engagement. And one of the things he wants, in fact, even though we're going to be perfected really much before we see him, because the tribulation is going to help cleanse us and make us white. So when we do meet him, we're going to be we're going to have his righteousness. Everything is going to be fine as far as us being accepted and worthy. We wouldn't be, if we weren't worthy, we wouldn't be there. But if we are there, we are going to be worthy and clean, and everything is going to be nice, and he's going to like us. He's going to love us, and we're going to love him. But we're going to have 1,000 years first before we go consume the marriage with the new Jerusalem. All right? Now, between the two, between the heaven and earth and the law, the one that has to be fulfilled first with every jot and tittle is going to be the law. I think I beat that horse, but let's I did a Google search on jot and tittle, and I didn't really get too much consensus on what it really means. I mean, they were talking about how the Hebrew letter Yud was meant a jot, and the tittle meant something else. I don't even remember, but that wasn't everybody saying that. They were saying different things, and I had an idea before I even looked it up. And I think the way I first understood it, I think it is the right way to look at this, the whole thing, because Hebrew has letters that are consonants, and they have little marks that give you how to pronounce the consonant. Okay, for example, right, looking at this table right here, you have the aleph. Underneath the aleph is a little symbol that's called kamets, and when the aleph and the kamets are together like that, it gives you an A sound as in aqua. Okay? And then you have the next one, which is, again, an aleph, and underneath that is a patak. All right? And that has an A sound as an aqua. So they're very, very different, except of a little tiny little way you write the patak. When you write the patak, you only have, and I think that's the tittle, that little dash. I think that's the tittle. That's my guess. But if you had a kametz in there, it does make a difference sometimes. And it actually does make a difference in the meaning of the word. All right? It's sort of like he dots all his I's and crosses all the T's. You heard that expression? Okay. Now, if you take a lowercase I, you don't dot it, it's not even a letter. It's not accepted. It's not even in the typewriter. You have to put the dot for an I, for a lowercase I. And it's the same thing with a T. If you don't cross the T, it's a different letter. It's an L. In other words, you have to dot your I's, you have to dot your J's, you have to cross your T's. That's the idea. It's what you're doing here. You're talking about little things that you have to have in order to make the whole thing work. All right? Now, to give you an example, let's look at the word in Hebrew sarai. All right? It has a little dot. If you can see, it has a little dot over the sheen. Okay, it's on the left side. So anyway, sarai means princess. All right? And if you have the dot on the other side, on the right side of the sheen, it means enemy. You see the word, the word for enemy there, sharai at the bottom there. When the dot is on the right of the sheen, it's pronounced sh, as in sh. If the dot is on the left of the sheen, it's pronounced s, like an s, like you say s without the h. So there's a different way to pronounce it, and the different way to pronounce it changes the meaning of the word. Let's stay with the word enemy right there. You can see the word enemy, the first one for Strong's 8325, underneath the resh, the looks like an R, this looks like a backward R, is a kametz, and that means enemy. And then underneath the resh for the second one, for Strong's 8324, that means enemies, plural. So it changed the meaning. Those little dots and tittles, they changed the meaning. Now Sarah went from a princess to an enemy just by putting the dot on the other side. So I mean, it's like he's not going to have any meaning in his law changed, and that happens all the time. And I think he's tired of it. He says one thing and people say what he meant and they change the meaning. And that's a clever way of saying don't change the meaning. And he can't change the meaning because he writes it into our hearts. All right, so we got nothing to lose. We'll understand what he means, and everything is good. All right, so I would like to point out that from Ezekiel 36 all the way to 48 chapters, it's very similar to Revelation itself, is almost exclusive to the beginning of the first seal and the last 7 years. But there are a few exceptions to that as well. Revelation 14:6 and 7. And I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation and kindred and tongue and people, saying with a loud voice, Fear God, and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him that made heaven and earth, and the sea, and the fountains of waters. That angel appears in when the 7 trumpets are being sounded. Okay, and he is an angel that is broadcasting the gospel, because he has the everlasting gospel, the good news about Jesus, and he preaches unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation, kindred, tongue, and people. So are the 2 witnesses that were witnessing before the trumpet sounded. Okay, within the first 42 months, they are doing their witnessing, and they are witnessing about the good news as well. Okay, they are trying to get people to repent. So the angel during the trumpets, and the 2 witnesses are also. So the gospel is they're trying to get attention to the people. And I don't know how successful they are, and we'll know that. God knows that. Another time in Revelation, you have it's almost exclusively before the last 7 years. All right, it's almost exclusively the messages to the 2 churches. Okay, for example, Revelation 3: He that overcomes, the same shall be clothed in white raiment, and I will not blot out his name out of the book of life, but I will confess his name before my Father and before his angels. So that verse, of course, applied to us now, and to the church that it was spoken to, and all the churches. Uh, these messages are for everybody, everybody that believes. The way I look at it. But they are separated into 7 churches, and it's 7 times he says, listen, if you have ears. If you overcome, in other words, in Revelation, you have the saints under the altar in the 5th seal that overcame. They didn't deny his name, and they were killed. And that's why they were given white raiment, white robes. And he will not block out his name out of the book of life. So these are ones that overcame, did not deny him. They were saved before they were tested, and they're saved after they're tested. But they could have been blocked out of the book of life if they failed the test. And what does he do? He confesses his name before my Father and before angels. So he's proud of us when we overcome like that. We have to keep that in mind. But that I brought those two Revelation verses out as an example of how it applies both in the last 7 years and before the last 7 years. Okay, but most of the book of Revelation applies to the last 7 years, and most of the book of Ezekiel specifically applies to the last 7 vials after the sound of the 7th trumpet. The ones I want to point out are the ordinances of the law of God, the law of Moses, that apply more so to before the revelation even started, during the time of the Second Temple, during the time of Ezra as the high priest returning after they came back to Jerusalem and built the temple again. There were many years that happened from then until it was destroyed in 70 AD. So all of that time, the verses that are in Ezekiel also apply to them. And there are a couple that really mostly apply to them. And I'm going to give you 2 examples. Okay, Ezekiel 44:22. Neither shall they take for their wives a widow. Now he's talking about the priests now. Neither shall they take for their wives a widow, nor her that is put away, somebody that's a woman that's been divorced. Now this is a priest that's not allowed to do this. But they shall take maidens of the seed of the house of Israel, or a widow that had a priest before. Now, I'm saying that this would apply in the Second Temple period. I don't think it's possible in the Millennium period, because then women are not going to be married nor given in marriage. As Jesus said, those that are worthy of the resurrection neither marry nor are given to marriage. This is a verse that doesn't apply to them during the Millennium time, which is what most Ezekiel is talking about. Now another one is Ezekiel 44:31. And the priest shall not eat of anything that is dead of itself or torn, whether it be fowl or beast. I don't see people dying in the Millennium, and I don't even see animals dying. I think everybody's going to be exactly the same from the first day to the last day of the 1,000 years. That's me. There's nothing that says it. So if you do say it like me, it's just a guess. I know the people don't die because we're going to be everlasting. We're in everlasting life at that time. We're in the first resurrection. We are in everlasting life, even if we don't have any rewards. But this one here, it says, the thing that is dead, it's dead of itself. In other words, it wasn't killed, because if you kill something to eat, first of all, I think most of the killing is going to be done only because of the sacrifice. I think a lamb has it made, other than the fact that he might be sacrificed. So anyway, the priest is not allowed to eat of anything that is dead of itself. And again, I'm thinking that this is before resurrection. If it was torn, in other words, if something killed it, whether it be a fowl like an eagle killed it, or a beast like a lion. Again, it's my opinion that the animals are not going to be killed anymore, unless it's a fish. Okay, fish are going to be eaten, I believe. What are the fishers at Engedi taking out of the Dead Sea, which is now full of fish? They're getting multitudes of fish. And what good would that all be? What good would it be if you couldn't eat them? So that's about it. Now let's go over to now Ezekiel 43:18 and 19. part where there is going to be sacrifices. And he said unto me, Son of man, thus saith the Lord God, these are the ordinances of the altar in the day when they shall make it, to offer burnt offerings thereon, and to sprinkle blood thereon. Now this is going to apply to Ezra and his sons that are going to be the priests, and also to the priests that are going to be serving in the millennium. And thou shalt give to the priests the Levites that be of the seed of Zadok, which approach unto me to minister unto me, saith the Lord God, a young bullock for a sin offering. 7 days shall they purge the altar and purify it, and they shall consecrate themselves. Now this is, again, this is part of the law that shall be observed every dot and tittle, like I was saying. And when these days are expired, it shall be that upon the 8th day and so forward, the priest shall make your burnt offerings upon the altar and your peace offerings, and I will accept you, says the Lord. Zadok means righteous. He was the high priest, the son of Ahitub of the house of Eleazar, the son of Aaron. He was the 11th born after Aaron. He joined with David after Saul's death and supported him against Absalom and Adonijah and anointed Solomon as king. All right, so let's go take a look now at that altar that came from EzekielTemple.com. I thought the guy did a terrific job out of I was searching for some good diagrams of the altar of the temple. I think he did the best job. So this is the altar, and it's coming from, you see that if there's an altar for sacrifices like we just read, that means they're going to be having sacrifices of animals. They're going to have the Passover. They're going to have the Shavuot, the Pentecost day. They're going to have all of that. Like I said, like I am saying in this video, every jot and tittle, every commandment, every ordinance is going to be observed for 1,000 years. All right, so anyway, this is the detail. You're looking at right now at the detail of third temple that Ezekiel laid out. And you see how there's so much detail in there. And he gives the measurements and everything. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons I thought this guy was so good, he gives you the measurement and the verse where he got that measurement from, and he puts it all out, and you see that it's almost like whoever gets a copy of this information, which is in the Bible, they'll be able to make that altar. They'll be able to put the altar where it belongs. And you can see here that there's a spot in the middle for the altar where it would go. And this is the temple itself. It's right in front. I say in front because they usually like to say the front of everything is the east. You notice there's no entrance out of the west, and that goes towards the Western Sea. But then there's the temple itself that has a holy place, and it has a holy of holies. And I didn't see too many verses that talk about that. I didn't see anything about a curtain. We're going to worship before the Prince, who is Yehoshua HaMashiach, our Messiah, and he is our God. He's going to be right with us. You're allowed to touch him. I believe you're allowed to touch him anyway. Okay, and then there's another interesting diagram that he has here. It was very confusing, and I avoided reading all of that. I mean, there's no reason to read all of that. We can watch it. We can see the map here. We can see the diagram. But this particular diagram, he gives you the arrow path of the walk that Ezekiel had when he was making those measurements. and he gives you little verses. Okay? It makes it more real, the path that he takes. Okay, this is a simplified, anything that they say here is explained. This is Herod's temple, okay? And this shows you the route that Mary took when she had uh, Jesus circumcised on the eighth day, and he met Simon at the east gate. Simon declared that he saw the glory of God when Jesus was presented. But you notice that it's the temples, all three temples are similar. Have a lot of similarity. They have the outer court, they have the inner court where uh, a Gentile's not allowed, but a Gentile would be allowed if he's circumcised in the heart. Okay, so let me end on a nice thought, and I'm getting this thought in Isaiah 19, starting with verse 23. And in that day there be a highway out of Egypt to Assyria, and the Assyrian shall come into Egypt. So there's going to be transportation going from Egypt to Assyria, and the Assyrians are going to go from Assyria to Egypt. And they're going to come through Israel, and they're going to come according to this idea, which he's pointing out, which is probably true, which is probably why they're coming. The Assyrian that comes towards Egypt may stop at the temple where he's going to walk through. He's saying what he's suggesting is the Assyrian is going to walk through the temple and glorify God, and so is the Egyptian going to do the same thing. And the Egyptians shall serve with the Assyrians. And then 24 and 25, in that day shall Israel be the third. Okay, so they're going to mention three now. In that day shall Israel be the third with Egypt and with Assyria, even a blessing in the midst of the land, whom the Lord of hosts shall bless, saying, Blessed be Egypt, my people, Assyria, the work of my hands, and Israel, my inheritance. It's nice to know that we have a God that loves his people, his chosen ones, and he chooses them out of all the nations, including the nations that have harmed his people, his inheritance. And he's forgiving, and he's loving, and he's not saving all of the Assyrians or all of the Egyptians or all of the people of Israel. He's saving those that have repented of their sins, that believe in him as their Messiah, and anybody that was born before Jesus came is going to have the ability to kneel down before him when Jesus said, as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so shall the Son of Man be lifted up. And I think everybody's going to get the opportunity to do that if they missed out on the gospel itself. If they missed out on the gospel, whether they received it and lost it or whether they never wanted it, those guys are going to lose out. They're going to lose out forever and forever. There's nothing they can do. And anybody that was resurrected, anybody resurrected in the first resurrection, will have the opportunity to to lift up Jesus the way the serpent was lifted up in the wilderness, and therefore be saved. If you looked at the serpent on the pole, your fatal snake bite, serpent bites, poison bites would have no effect and you were going to live. Otherwise, you were going to die in the wilderness there. Okay? So he is a just God. He is fair. He's like we see right here. He blesses Egypt, and Egypt and Assyria were the first two heads of the red dragon that hurt and persecuted the people of the earth and the people of God. Shalom, everybody. Jesus loves you.